It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast, talking your property news, of course. What else? We are here 7 days a week, and you can hear us streaming right now on iHeartRadio and Spotify. It is a Tuesday. It is September the 30th, which means RBA Decision Day. We'll get to that in just a moment. Good morning, Shannon and Denise, who are hoping to be first-time home buyers into the new year for 2026. It is fast approaching. I've got to say that for you, Shannon and Denise. And you're hoping to buy into the Brisbane property market. You are sisters in your 20s, and you wanted to talk about the negativity that people are talking about when they're moving off from Australia to countries like Vietnam. You say, as bad as buying a property is in Australia, there is no place on earth like living here. And you say that your friends and family are here, and while you could both be earning more money in different countries, the lifestyle of living here, especially in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, is second to none. And you say that you're disappointed to hear about people leaving, but maybe things might be even harder when you leave for another country. And the final thing that you said was, take a chill pill. So I don't think you're alone. I think that people probably can relate to that. If you think Shannon and Denise might be not quite hitting the mark because you are leaving as well, let us know. You know the email address. It is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget, you can leave a voice message as well. You'll find the recording link in the show notes. All right, let's go to Sydney and catch up with Eliza Owen. She is the Head of Residential Research Australia at Cotality. Good morning to you, Eliza. Welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast. Yes, I guess different strokes for different folks when it comes to young people either staying or leaving.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me. And I love that advice too. Just take a chill pill. Everyone, just chill out a little bit. You know, when it comes to Australia, we do have cost of living pressures. That's been a pretty universal story. But property prices are also high here for a reason. It's things like that rule of law, the stability that we have politically, and the wonderful lifestyle that we have in Australia. That's a reflection of it. I imagine a lot of people who are moving overseas to get better bang for their buck when it comes to cost of living and housing also have maybe a level of privilege where they can kind of work remotely and still earn a relatively high income. That's just my guess. I don't think that means we totally accept, you know, some of the outstretched levels of affordability that we see and quality of homes and things like that. It is really important perspective to have. So I like that email.
Yeah, and, you know, talking about working offshore, people do go to America to earn the greenback. This is something we were just talking recently about. You don't have to leave Australia if you are outsourcing your services into America and you are getting paid in greenback, in USD currency. I mean, that is absolute gold at the moment when you convert it. You know, you don't have to leave.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that is a really good point as well, for sure.
And you were saying to me off air that you've just been talking to a friend of yours that has come back into Sydney, finding the difficult situation of where the market is at the moment.
Yeah, so this is really interesting, and it ties into some recent news that we've seen over the past few weeks about the state of the rental market, the fact that vacancy rates are broadly still really tight across Australia. We've even seen a little bit of re-acceleration in the pace of rent growth. So the rate of growth was cooling down there for a bit. It's picking up a bit now. And it essentially means it's a landlord's market. So my colleague, he's an expat. He's come from the US, and he was somewhat appalled at the state of some of the rental properties that he was inspecting. So things like, you know, curtains that had just been torn down, marks on the walls, marks on the carpet. And he was really surprised to see rental properties presented like that. But it's just, unfortunately, the state of the market that I guess not all landlords would bother to worry about that sort of thing because they don't really have to.
Yeah, it's a good point that you raise, and it's right on track with what we were talking about last week with Stephanie, who arrived at a Sydney rental inspection. She inspected a modern 2-bedroom apartment for $570 a week. Instead, she found a filthy, unlocked apartment, stained bathroom, soap-scummed shower, debris all over the floor, basically one hell of a mess. And when she asked the agency, is this how you present your properties? The response was, it will be clean before you move in. But, that's not the point. But to your point, this is what's happening in the market because of the rentals being so hot.
It's interesting. It makes me wonder if those landlords could get even more if they did present the properties in a more neat way, whether that's something that's happening through the property manager or the landlord themselves is obviously not quite clear. Yeah, there you go. I wonder if that could be a bit of a differentiator. But broadly speaking, yes, if you're a landlord in one of our capital cities, you don't have to look too hard to get a tenant.
We are talking to Eliza, and she is the head of Research Australia at Cotality. When we come back, we have to talk about the RBA because they are meeting. Of course, we will have the latest news when that comes to light. Anthony Landau will be here, but we'll talk more about that after this.
We dive deep into topics like buying, selling, investing, and maximising your property's value, from mortgage advice to the latest property data and trending numbers. Your real estate journey starts here.
And right now it is time for another property tip. Recently we were in Willoughby talking to Nick Dunn, who is back with a property tip for us this morning. Good morning to you, Nick. What have you got for us?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of things that a vendor and an agent can control. The outcome, unfortunately, isn't one of them directly. The first one is the price guide that you quote to the market. You've got to make that attractive to get buyers actually engaging with your property online and effectively walking through your front door. So pricing it attractively from the start is very important. Second one is how you present the property. When a buyer walks through, they need to get excited and emotional. And typically when they do that, they might tend to pay you a little bit more than what the property should be worth on paper. The third one is your promotion. So how your agent actively pushes it out. Don't just sit on the back foot and wait for all the inquiries to come through from Domain and Real Estate. And I think the fourth one, and probably one of the more important ones, is your timing. When we look at our market over a 12-month period, there's probably 4 or 5 of those months where you can bet your bottom dollar that there will be an inflated level of stock to compete with. Unfortunately, the buyer levels don't tend to move in that fashion. You're always dealing with a similar level of buyer interest. Identify the month where you know that the buying market is there and active, but the stock levels to compete with aren't. And that'll give you the best opportunity, provided that you're priced correctly and presented well, to maximise your bottom line effectively.
Listen to expert perspectives with exclusive real estate conversations and supercharge your knowledge base with us.
And it is Real Estate Tuesday, and it is RBA Rate Day. And Eliza, got to pick your brain here. We're so very close on this. Which way do you think it's going? Because so many people are saying, no, it's going to be in pause mode and we might get something in November.
I'd have to agree with that. One thing that we know about the RBA's approach over the course of the year is that they've been waiting for full inflation results before they decide whether to move on the cash rate. That's partly why we got the pause through the middle of the year as well. We did get one indicator that would be important for the RBA, which is the monthly CPI report. Again, they're going to be waiting for the quarterly because that has the full set, whereas at the moment, monthly is only covering part of the goods and services basket. But the monthly CPI did show a pretty decent result when you strip out the volatility. The trimmed mean, which is just the name of the measure that they follow within that inflation data, actually did see a bit of a reduction, rising 2.6%, and that was down from the previous month. I think that monthly indicator points to inflation going in the right direction, but ultimately they are going to be waiting for the full quarterly results before making a move, which is why so many people are saying November is going to be the meeting where we get a next cut.
Yeah, I'm slightly different. I think that there's an outside chance. I said this last week that we might end up getting 25 basis points off, but we don't have long to wait. And if you are not subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button, because we will inform you the second that information is out this afternoon from the RBA. Right, it is spring. Let's talk about spring selling and your thoughts on that.
So the spring selling season is looking pretty strong for 2025. The start of the year saw a bit of hesitancy from sellers. Obviously, you had all the uncertainty around Trump tariff proposals and spikes in geopolitical risks. But as we've come through to the spring sell season, buyer demand has improved because you've seen 3 reductions in the official cash rate. So there's more money available for buyers. Households have also seen growth in real income. So that puts a bit more money in their pocket as well. And we've seen a gradual improvement in consumer sentiment. Through September, the results showed kind of a gradual return to confidence about whether it's a good time to buy a dwelling. And so all of this points to basically stronger buyer demand. And then on the supply side of things, new listings have started to climb. Sellers who had been waiting for stronger prices, more buyer demand, they're starting to react to that. But ultimately, total supply levels are pretty low. Listings across Australia are sitting at about 121,000 properties for sale, but that's 20% lower than the historic 5-year average for this time of year. So rising buyer demand, tight supply, it all kind of spells a good selling position for the spring selling season.
Yes, talking of position, you guys have got the latest home value index. Now, that is coming out tomorrow, which means we're going to be talking about that soon. Can you give us a little bit of a teaser on this?
Yeah, so probably not surprising given what we just talked about with buyers and sellers and where they're at. We have seen more momentum in the home value index. So that's going to spell out stronger price growth for September than what we've seen so far this year. And we can imagine it's going to be a pretty broad-based increase as well. If you look across our capital cities, supply levels are lower than their historic averages everywhere. And of course, rate cuts are a pretty broad instrument as well. So that's enabling a boost to buyer demand in most parts of the country. I suppose, as was expected with a year where interest rates are falling, we can expect pretty strong results for the spring selling season, and that'll be reflected in the data out tomorrow as well.
What about an area that you could just tease us to watch out for tomorrow? Like, is there a particular area that has really sprung its head up and said, look at what's happened to me?
Well, Darwin's definitely had that story over the course of the year. It's seen a very strong increase of almost 10% through the year to date. And I think that's just coming off the back of the fact that it's one of the more affordable markets left in Australia because it underperformed in previous years. To be honest, the strong performers that are also topping the list, areas that have done well over the past few years. So Perth, Brisbane, those cities continue to lead the market. As I say, look out for the full results tomorrow. But overall, if you're selling a property, it's a pretty good time for you this spring.
All right, we'll leave it there, Eliza. You're always a ton of information when it comes to property. Enjoy your Tuesday and this afternoon, of course, with the RBA decision. And thanks for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Unlock the secrets of real estate and stay informed about the latest real estate buzz with hot market trends, emerging suburbs and hidden gems.
Carrum Downs, tell us a little bit about, who's moving in, just to give us a little bit of an understanding, including the population.
Yeah, so there's about 20,000 people live in Carrum Downs. There's probably 9,000 properties available. A lot of them were established in the late 70s, early 80s on one outside of Carrum Downs, and then the developers got in and did a lot more newer homes and units from about the year 2000 on. So it's a very affordable, popular suburb.
So tell us a little bit about the investors. They're about, 50% of the people that are buying into your area?
Yeah, that's correct. About 12 months ago, we didn't see a lot of investors. We probably had about 10%, and then that dramatically shifted. And yeah, as you said, we now have about 50% investors. Some buy directly through us and some use buyer's agents, which has been a new phenomena in this suburb. We haven't had buyer's agents contacting us as much before.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.